I was out socializing, strengthening.
Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving deep into the complete storyline and breaking down the epic recap of Too Late, My Alpha. Before we unpack this story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Without further ado, let's get into the recap.
The laughter in the hall slowly died down as the vibrations grew stronger. Dust fell from the stone rafters above. The hanging iron chandeliers began to swing wildly, casting erratic, dancing shadows across the walls. "What is that?" Molly asked, her smug smile faltering as she gripped Leo's arm. "Is it an earthquake?" Leo stood up, his alpha instincts screaming that something was catastrophically wrong. The vibrations weren't random. They were rhythmic, heavy, synchronized. It was the sound of marching. "Guards," Leo barked, drawing his ceremonial sword. "Secure the perimeter." But before the pack guards could even reach the exits, a terrifying, deafening horn blast shattered the night air, echoing with such raw primal power that several younger wolves in the hall fell to their knees, clutching their ears. Crash! The massive, reinforced oak doors of the banquet hall were violently blown off their iron hinges. The heavy wood splintered into 1,000 pieces, flying across the room and smashing into the banquet tables. Screams of sheer terror erupted as the dust cleared. Standing in the shattered doorway was an army. They were not ordinary wolves. They were towering, massive lichen warriors clad in interlocking silver armor, their eyes glowing with a terrifying, unnatural golden light. They moved with absolute, lethal precision, fanning out and immediately surrounding the entire banquet hall in a matter of seconds. The Twilight Clan warriors tried to draw their weapons, but the lichens moved faster, disarming them with brutal, bone-crushing efficiency. "Stand down!" Leo roared, his voice cracking slightly in the face of the overwhelming force. He stepped down from the high table, trying to project his alpha aura. "This is my territory. Identify yourselves." The ranks of the silver-armored lichens parted perfectly down the center. Walking through the corridor of towering warriors was a man who radiated an aura so oppressive, so fundamentally dominant, that the air in the room felt physically heavy. He wore a long, sweeping black coat adorned with silver wolf pelts. His aristocratic face was sharp and unyielding, his golden eyes burning like twin suns. It was Alpha Arthur of the Silver Moon Clan, the vanguard of the Royal Knights Pack. Arthur walked slowly toward the high table, not even bothering to draw his massive broadsword. He looked at the trembling Twilight Clan elders, and then his gaze locked onto Leo. "Your territory?" Arthur asked. His voice wasn't a roar. It was a low, seismic rumble that demanded absolute submission. "You stand in a shack built of mud, boy, and call it a kingdom." Leo's heart hammered against his ribs. He recognized the insignias on the silver armor. The Silver Moon Clan, the most ruthless, powerful, and ancient royal bloodline on the continent. "Why were they here?" "Alpha Arthur," Leo said, forcing himself not to bow, though his knees trembled. "We have no quarrel with the royal packs. Why have you breached my borders?" Arthur stopped 10 feet from Leo. He looked at Molly, cowering behind Leo's shoulder, and let out a scoff of utter disgust. "I have not come for a quarrel," Arthur stated coldly, his golden eyes piercing Leo's soul. "I have come to collect what you stole. I have come for my queen." "Your queen?" Leo asked, utter confusion masking his fear. "There is no royal blood in this pack." "You are mistaken." Arthur didn't answer. He turned his gaze toward the dark staircase at the far end of the banquet hall. The entire room fell dead silent. Every eye followed Arthur's gaze. Slowly, descending the wooden stairs, was Mia. She wore a simple, dark traveling cloak, holding her worn leather satchel in one hand, and holding Ethan's small hand in the other. "Mia," Leo gasped, his mind struggling to process the scene. "What are you doing? Get back upstairs. You are embarrassing the pack in front of the royals." Mia didn't look at Leo. She walked straight past the trembling Twilight elders, straight past the shattered banquet tables. As Mia walked through the hall, the towering, terrifying lichen warriors, the deadliest killers on the continent, did the unthinkable. In perfect, synchronized unison, they dropped to one knee, bowing their heads in absolute reverence as she passed. Clank, clank, clank. The sound of armored knees hitting the stone floor echoed like a death knell in Leo's ears. Mia stopped in front of Arthur. Arthur, the unyielding alpha who had just insulted Leo's entire existence, immediately dropped to one knee. He placed his right fist over his heart, bowing his head deeply. "Princess Mia of the Royal Nikes bloodline," Arthur announced, his voice vibrating with absolute, unquestionable devotion. "Your father, the king, awaits your return. Your army stands ready at your command." The banquet hall stopped breathing. Molly's jaw dropped so far it practically unhinged. The wine glass in her hand slipped from her fingers, shattering against the floor. "Princess," Leo whispered, his face draining of all color, turning a sickening, ghostly white. He stared at Mia, the woman he had called a weak omega, the woman he had slapped, the woman he had replaced. "Mia, what is this? What is he talking about?" Mia slowly turned to look at Leo. In the savage, ancient hierarchy of the werewolf world, bloodlines were everything. Power was measured by the purity of one's shifting blood and the territory a pack commanded. But above all power and lineage was the sacred law of the mate, a soul-binding connection decreed by the moon goddess herself. To defy it was a crime against nature. To exploit it was an unforgivable sin. 7 years ago, Mia was not just an Omega. She was the rightful daughter of the Nikes pack, possessing the bloodline of royal alphas. She was promised a future of unyielding authority, engaged to the powerful Alpha Arthur of the Silver Moon clan. She was destined to be a queen. But then, the border wars erupted. The Nikes pack clashed with the rival Twilight clan. Amidst the chaos of the battlefield, a young, fierce wolf named Leo was ambushed. He was a second-born, a shadow living beneath the legacy of his older brother, who was the alpha at the time. When the enemy unleashed 3 silver-tipped arrows lethal to any werewolf aimed squarely at Mia's heart, it was Leo who threw himself in their path. The silver burned through his flesh, nearly costing him his life to save hers. In the werewolf world, a life debt of that magnitude demanded a soul's payment. Driven by guilt, profound gratitude, and the intoxicating, foolish illusion of young love, Mia made a choice that shattered her destiny. She abandoned her royal family. She broke her engagement to Alpha Arthur. She willingly branded herself an Omega to sever her royal ties, descending to the lowest rank just so she could be with Leo, the weak outsider she believed was her true mate. For 7 years, she wore his mark. She birthed his son, Ethan. She endured the contempt of his pack, all to honor the man who took 3 silver arrows for her. But gratitude is a fragile foundation for an empire, and a blood bond forged in debt slowly turns into a cage of thorns. The ancestral home of Leo's pack was a sprawling stone fortress overlooking the deep pine forests. Rain lashed against the heavy glass windows of the Alpha's study. Mia stood in the center of the room, her heart hammering against her ribs, a suffocating mixture of rage and profound exhaustion pooling in her chest. Strewn across the heavy oak desk were photographs. Blurry, undeniable photographs captured by a hired tracker. They showed Leo her mate, the father of her child, the alpha of the pack entangled in the shadows with Molly Belrose. Molly was the widow of Leo's older brother. When the older brother died on a hunting expedition a year ago, Leo had ascended to the Alpha seat. Along with the title, he inherited the political pressure of the Twilight clan, Molly's powerful family. He claimed he only took Molly in to protect the pack's resources. He claimed it was a political necessity. "I swear, I won't touch her," Leo had promised Mia a year ago, holding her face in his hands. "Not in body, not in heart. My blood bond. It only recognizes you and Ethan. Once I've fully secured my position as Alpha, we'll hold a moonlight mating ceremony that will stun the entire werewolf world. Okay? You better keep your word," Mia had warned him. "If you betray me, I'll take Ethan and disappear completely. You'll never find us, I promise," Leo had sworn. "If I ever betray you, may my bloodline wither and I die." That vow hadn't even lasted a year. Mia stared at the photographs. "I hate these," she whispered, her voice trembling as the sheer magnitude of his betrayal washed over her. "Every single one. That's ancient history." Leo sighed, leaning back in his leather chair, rubbing his temples as if he were the victim. "It means nothing. This is about pack matters. On the anniversary of my brother's death, Molly is unstable. I have to comfort her." "Night after night?" Mia asked, her voice cracking as tears stung her eyes. "Tearing my heart apart? Is that pack matters?" Leo didn't answer. He just looked away, annoyed. You once took 3 silver arrows for me, Mia said, her voice dropping to a hollow, devastating whisper. Risked your life to save me. That's why I gave up my royal status to become your mate. I gave up my family, my pride. All I ever wanted was to stay by your side. She placed her hand over her chest, right where his mating mark burned against her skin. But now this bond, Mia choked out, fighting the tears. It's nothing but a cage for me and my son. For Ethan. It's time I finally leave. Mia turned on her heel and walked out of the study, the heavy oak door clicking shut behind her. She walked down the long, dimly lit corridor toward the nursery. Her heart physically ached, a deep primal throb of the severed bond. But she couldn't afford to break down. She had a son to protect. She pushed the nursery door open. Sitting on the edge of the small bed was Ethan. He was 6 years old, incredibly small for his age, with messy hair and large, soulful eyes. He was holding a small, woven grass ball, a training toy used by alpha pups to develop their hunting instincts. But Ethan wasn't like the other pups. He was weak. His body was plagued by an inexplicable bone fever that prevented him from shifting into his wolf form. In a pack that worshipped strength, Ethan was treated like a broken, useless runt. Mom, Ethan asked softly, looking up as Mia entered the room. His small face was etched with a sadness no child should ever bear. Is it because I'm a useless omega that Dad won't come back to see me tonight? Does he not like me? The question hit Mia like a physical blow. She rushed forward, dropping to her knees and pulling her son into a fierce, desperate embrace. No, Mia wept, kissing the top of his head. No, baby, you are the best boy in the world. You hear me? The absolute best. She pulled back, wiping the tears from her own face, forcing a brave smile for her son. Let's leave this place, Ethan, Mia whispered, smoothing his hair. Let's go somewhere without lies. Somewhere they love you. Okay? Don't cry, Mom, Ethan said softly, wiping a tear from her cheek with his tiny thumb. He looked down at his grass ball. It's just, my birthday is in 3 days. I want to spend it with Dad. One last time. Please? Can we just stay for my birthday? Mia's heart shattered all over again. Her son, despite all the neglect and the coldness, still desperately craved his father's love. How could she deny him his one final wish? Okay, Mia nodded, swallowing the massive lump in her throat. Okay, after your birthday, we'll leave. I promise. That night, while Ethan slept soundly in his bed, his small chest rising and falling with the rhythm of his labored breathing, Mia stood on the balcony overlooking the dark, sprawling forests of the territory. She held a small, silver communication crystal in her hand. It was a relic from her past, a direct line to the Royal Knights pack. She hadn't used it in 7 years. She squeezed the crystal. A soft blue holographic projection hummed to life in the cool night air. Standing in the projection was an older man with silver hair, a scarred face, and an aura of absolute terrifying authority. It was her father, the king of the Knights pack. Standing beside him was a younger, incredibly handsome man with sharp, aristocratic features and golden eyes. It was Alpha Arthur, the man she had abandoned at the altar. Father, Mia whispered, her voice trembling. The old king's eyes widened. Mia. Father, I know I was wrong, Mia wept, the years of isolated suffering finally breaking her. I was a fool. Mia, it's been 7 years, her father said, his voice thick with a mixture of stern anger and profound relief. You are my daughter, the rightful blood of the royal line. 7 years ago, you abandoned your family, your bloodline, and your engagement for a weak outsider. Arthur stepped forward in the projection. He raised his hand. On his finger rested a silver band, the engagement ring Mia had returned to him. I've worn this ring for 7 years, Arthur said, his golden eyes burning with an intense, unyielding devotion. Never taken it off. The past doesn't matter anymore, Mia. What matters is that you're finally willing to come back. The moon always guides lost wolves home, her father nodded. Come back to the Knights pack, my pup. Arthur, tell me where Mia is. I'm sending my wolves to bring her and my grandson, Ethan, home tonight. No, Mia interrupted quickly. I still have things to handle here. Give me 3 days. Ethan wants to spend his birthday with his father. Let him have no regrets. After that, I'll bring Ethan home. Arthur's jaw tightened. I've waited long enough. Allow me to lead the pack to escort you out in 3 days, Mia. This time, I won't let you leave my territory again. Thank you, Arthur, Mia whispered. The projection faded, leaving her alone in the dark. Only 3 days left, Mia whispered to the wind, looking toward Leo's study. I'll take this as repaying you for saving me back then, and letting Ethan have no regrets. In 3 days, I'll set you free, Leo. You can be with Molly in public. Ethan and I are done with your lies. The next evening, the tension in the ancestral home reached a boiling point. Mia was in the nursery, pacing the floor. Ethan's bone fever had flared up aggressively. His small body was trembling, sweating profusely as he lay in bed, clutching his grass ball. The door to the nursery creaked open. Leo walked in. He looked disheveled, his shirt slightly untucked, and clinging to his clothes was the unmistakable, sickeningly sweet scent of cheap perfume, the scent of Molly Belrose. Mia's blood instantly turned to ice. Don't touch me, she hissed as Leo tried to reach out to her. What's wrong? Leo sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. Who upset my Mia now? Our son has a fever, Mia said, her voice shaking with repressed fury, pointing at the shivering boy in the bed. He was still training with his grass ball in the cold just to earn your approval. And you come home in the middle of the night smelling like cheap perfume? Mia, I was out socializing. Leo lied effortlessly, strengthening the family's position with the Twilight clan elders. But I see that's upsetting my wife. Tell me what you want. I'll make it up to you. So, this strengthening the family means fucking Molly? Mia asked, the venom dripping from every syllable. Leo's eyes darkened. Don't overthink it, baby. You're the only one in my heart. He reached out to grab her arm. The sheer audacity of his lie, combined with the scent of the other woman, made Mia's stomach turn. Enough, Mia shouted, slapping his hand away with a resounding crack that echoed through the room. Don't touch me with the hands that touched her. Leo froze. His eyes flashed a dangerous, primal yellow. The alpha in him surged forward, enraged by the defiance. You dare hit me? Leo growled, stepping into her personal space, his physical dominance completely overwhelming her. Mia, don't forget you're just an Omega. I saved your life. Everything you have now, you owe to me. So that's your excuse for fucking Molly? Mia screamed back, tears of absolute betrayal spilling down her cheeks. Leo, did you forget the vow you made at your brother's funeral? You swore on your bloodline. Mia, my patience has limits. Leo roared. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing the room. All right, I'll admit it. Lately, I've been seeing Molly more than I probably should. But I need her pack to keep the border stable, to shut those damn elders up. Can't you understand that? Understand? Mia laughed, a hollow, broken sound. Right now, it kind of feels like I'm the third wheel between you two. Mia, you really should learn a thing or two from Molly, Leo sneered, weaponizing her insecurities. She knows how to think big picture, how to back an alpha from the shadows. And you? You're stuck at home all day, either with the kid or glued to me. You don't get it, do you, Omega? Mia stared at him, absolutely horrified by his twisted justification. Leo, without my calming pheromones keeping the rogues on the border from flipping out, you wouldn't even be able to hold the alpha's seat. And you actually think that's all Molly's doing? Right, Mia spat, her grief turning into pure, unadulterated hatred. I should learn from her. Learn how to mourn your brother on one hand, and climb into his younger brother's bed on the other. Smack! Leo struck her. It wasn't a full force blow, but the sheer disrespect of it sent Mia stumbling backward. Mia, Leo gasped, realizing what he had just done. Mom! A tiny, terrified voice pierced the violent silence. Ethan had crawled out of bed, shivering from his fever, and stood between his mother and the towering alpha. Dad, please don't fight with Mom, Ethan cried, holding his grass ball up like a shield. I'm scared. Leo looked down at his sick, trembling son. Guilt flashed across his features, but his arrogant pride quickly swallowed it. Ethan, that was just an accident. Your mother and I are not fighting. Leo crouched down, his tone turning harsh and demanding. As the son of an alpha, I command you, snap out of that weak, cowardly act right now. Ethan swallowed hard, fighting back his tears. He held up the grass ball. Yes, Dad. I've been getting faster at catching the grass ball. Will you stay tonight and check my progress? Mia knelt down, pulling her son back. He's been pushing himself until his bone fever flares up, Leo. And he still refuses to stop just to impress you. Leo looked at the boy, letting out a heavy sigh. All right, let's see what you've got, pup. But before Ethan could even throw the ball, the heavy oak doors of the nursery burst open. A pack guard stood in the doorway, panting heavily. Alpha, the guard yelled. Something's wrong. Miss Belrose fainted in her room. Leo's head snapped up immediately, all concern for his sick son vanishing in an instant. Well, Mia said coldly, glaring at her mate. She might have gotten a little carried away with you just now. Mia, stop, Leo snapped, standing up and rushing toward the door. Since my brother died, Molly only has me. I'll go check on her. I'll be back soon, Dad, Ethan cried out, dropping his ball and running to grab Leo's pant leg. You promised to stay with me. Don't go, Daddy. Please. Leo didn't even look down. He forcefully pulled his leg free from the child's grasp. Ethan, no, let go. Leo stormed out of the room, leaving his sick son crying on the floor and his mate entirely broken. The night stretched on in agonizing silence. Mia sat by Ethan's bedside, holding a small glass vial filled with a glowing green liquid. That's the last vial for Ethan, Mia whispered to herself, her hands shaking. This is the only herb that keeps his bone fever in check. Without it, he'll be in agony all night. She looked out the window. A fierce storm was brewing. He's just got a fever, Mia resolved, standing up and grabbing her cloak. I'll go gather more herbs in the forest. By dawn, we can't wait on them. Mom, Ethan shifted in the bed, his small voice hoarse. Is it because I'm too weak? Because I can't shift like other pups? That Dad doesn't like me? Mia rushed back to his side, her heart breaking into a million pieces. Absolutely no, Ethan. Listen to me. Those who truly love you don't leave when you need them the most. Then, will Dad come back? Ethan asked, his eyes heavy with exhaustion. Ethan, Mommy staying with you is the same, okay? Mia cried, kissing his forehead. Mommy is here. She turned toward the door, her eyes burning with an absolute, unyielding fire. The last shreds of her love for Leo had burned away into ash. Go, Leo, Mia thought fiercely. Go to your Molly. Your hypocrisy only makes it easier for me and my son to leave. You'll never know what you abandoned tonight. Far away, in the impregnable fortress of the Silver Moon clan, Alpha Arthur was preparing for war. He stood in his grand armory, surrounded by elite Lycan warriors. Arthur's golden eyes burned with an obsessive, terrifying devotion. He looked at his chief advisor. Replace this dress, Arthur commanded, pointing to a magnificent red gown draped over a mannequin. Mia doesn't like red. Swap the scents in the main hall to her favorite white roses, but keep it subtle. Yes, sir, the advisor bowed. Max, Arthur called out to his head of security. Maximum security. No exceptions. Rebuild the backyard into a proper playground for the little pup. And cancel everything on tomorrow's schedule. Arthur pulled his heavy, silver-edged broadsword from its scabbard, the metal gleaming in the torchlight. I'll go get them myself, Arthur declared. See you in 2 days, Mia. The storm raged through the night, but by dawn, the skies over the ancestral territory had cleared into a cold, biting gray. Mia had spent the darkest hours of the night scouring the rain-soaked forest, her hands bleeding from digging through the frozen earth to find the rare herbs needed to break Ethan's bone fever. She returned just as the sun crested the horizon, immediately crushing the roots into a bitter poultice. It worked. By mid-morning, Ethan's fever had finally broken, but the emotional toll of the night had left the small boy looking more fragile than ever. Today was his 6th birthday. In a normal pack, an Alpha's pup would be celebrated with grand feasts, hunting games, and the presentation of his first training blade. But in Leo's ancestral home, the halls were dead silent. There were no decorations. There were no guests. Mia sat on the edge of the bed, watching Ethan stare blankly out the window. He was holding his woven grass ball, his small fingers tracing the dried blades. Mom, Ethan whispered, his voice completely devoid of the usual childish joy. He didn't look at her. Don't be sad. Dad will have a better, stronger pup someday. Not like me. Always making him angry. The sheer, devastating resignation in her 6-year-old son's voice felt like a physical knife twisting in Mia's gut. He had internalized his father's neglect. He believed he was the problem. Mia grabbed Ethan's small hands, forcing him to look at her. Ethan, Mia said, her voice fierce, thick with unshed tears. You listen to me. You are already the best pup in the world. Do you hear me? The absolute best. You are kind, you are brave, and you have a heart stronger than any alpha in this pack. She pulled a small, carefully wrapped box from her pocket. She had traded one of her last remaining pieces of royal jewelry in the human village to buy it. She opened it, revealing a small, beautifully carved wooden wolf pendant. Your grandfather is waiting for us, Mia whispered, tying the pendant around his neck. And your Uncle Arthur. They love you very, very much. More than you can ever imagine. Ethan touched the wooden wolf, a tiny, hesitant spark of hope returning to his eyes. Really, really, Mia promised. She walked over to the small table in the corner of the nursery. Resting on it was a modest, hand-baked cake with 6 small candles flickering weakly in the drafty room. "It's okay, Mom," Ethan smiled, a brave, heartbreaking smile as he walked over to the table. "Let's blow out the candles together. Dad must be busy patrolling the territory. He's the alpha. He has to protect us." "You're such a good boy," Mia sobbed quietly, wrapping her arms around him from behind. Together, they leaned in and blew out the candles. The wisps of smoke drifted toward the ceiling, carrying away the last fragments of Ethan's innocence. Just as Mia was cutting the first slice of the small cake, heavy, urgent footsteps echoed down the hallway. The nursery door was pushed open. A high-ranking beta of the pack stood in the doorway, looking at Mia and Ethan with thinly veiled contempt. "The alpha demands your presence," the beta announced coldly. Mia's brow furrowed. "Leo is back? Tell him Ethan is resting." "He didn't ask if the boy was resting," the beta sneered. "He commanded that you both come straight to Moonlight Grove. Immediately." Mia froze. Moonlight Grove was the most sacred, ancient site in the territory. It was where the pack elders gathered to commune with the moon goddess and where the most significant pack ceremonies were held. It was absolutely forbidden for an Omega, especially an outsider Omega like Mia, to enter without explicit royal permission. "Moonlight Grove?" Mia asked, her guard instantly going up. "Why? If you feel even a little guilty toward Ethan, come spend his birthday with him." The beta relayed Leo's exact manipulative words with a smirk before turning and walking away. Ethan, however, didn't hear the malice. His eyes went wide, and he dropped his slice of cake. "Dad wants us to go to Moonlight Grove?" Ethan gasped, his face lighting up with pure, unadulterated ecstasy. He grabbed his mother's hand, practically vibrating with excitement. "Mom, did Dad prepare a surprise? Is he finally letting me appear before the elders?" Mia looked down at her son's glowing face. Every instinct in her body screamed that this was a trap, a cruel setup orchestrated by Molly or Leo. But looking at Ethan's desperate hope, she couldn't crush him. "Not today. Mom, can we go?" Ethan begged, tugging on her dress. "Just this one last time, please? He remembered my birthday." Mia swallowed the dread rising in her throat. She knelt down, buttoning Ethan's small coat. Arthur was coming in less than 48 hours. They just had to survive this one last day. "Okay," Mia whispered, smoothing his hair. "Yes, let's go. Mom, I can't wait to see Dad." Ethan cheered, grabbing his grass ball and running toward the door. The walk to Moonlight Grove took them deep into the ancient pine forest. As they approached the clearing, the sound of hundreds of wolves murmuring in low, reverent tones echoed through the trees. Mia held Ethan's hand tightly. As they broke through the tree line and stepped into the sacred grove, the sheer scale of the gathering took her breath away. The entire pack was there. Hundreds of wolves, elders, and warriors were gathered around the ancient glowing crystal altar in the center of the clearing. Banners of the Twilight Clan and the Nike's pack were hung from the ancient trees, snapping in the cold wind. "Wow, Mom! So many people!" Ethan gasped in awe, looking around at the massive crowd. He squeezed Mia's hand, his chest puffing out with childish pride. "Did Dad prepare a birthday party for me with the whole pack?" But as Mia and Ethan walked deeper into the crowd, the atmosphere was completely wrong. There were no smiles. There were no gifts. The wolves didn't part with respect. They parted with sneers of absolute disgust. The whispers that rippled through the crowd were toxic and venomous. "Look at the Omega. Why is the runt here? Disgusting. Bringing a weakling to the sacred altar." Mia's protective instincts flared. She pulled Ethan closer to her side. "Don't listen to them, baby. Just keep walking." They reached the inner circle of the grove. Standing atop the glowing crystal altar was Leo. He was dressed in his full, ceremonial alpha regalia, looking powerful and majestic. "Dad," Ethan cheered, waving his small hand excitedly, his voice breaking the solemn silence of the grove. Two massive, heavily armored elite guards immediately crossed their halberds in front of Mia and Ethan, blocking their path to the altar. "Halt!" the guard barked, his voice laced with absolute contempt. "Who allowed you to enter the sacred altar?" Ethan stumbled backward, intimidated by the massive weapons. An elder of the Twilight Clan stepped forward from the shadows of the altar. He looked down his nose at the 6-year-old boy, a half-blood mutt, The elder spat, his voice carrying perfectly across the silent grove. Dare step into our altar? An omega runt polluting our sacred ground. Ethan's smile vanished instantly. His lower lip began to tremble as the words hit him. He looked past the guards, desperately seeking his father's protection. But Leo didn't look angry at the elder. Leo just looked annoyed. And then, Ethan noticed who was standing directly beside his father. It was Molly Belrose. She was dressed in a breathtaking, ceremonial white gown, adorned with the sacred moonstone jewelry reserved only for the Luna of the pack. She stood shoulder to shoulder with Leo, her hand resting intimately on his chest. Ethan's small mind struggled to comprehend the scene. The banners, the ceremonial robes, his father holding another woman's hand on the sacred altar. "Dad," Ethan called out, his voice cracking, the desperate hope completely shattering. "Isn't today my birthday? Why is Aunt Molly here?" Molly looked down at the boy, a cruel, sickeningly sweet smirk twisting her lips. She leaned closer to Leo, whispering something in his ear that made the alpha sigh heavily. From the crowd, a young, arrogant wolf from the Twilight clan burst into loud, mocking laughter. "Oh my God!" The wolf sneered, pointing directly at Ethan. "That bastard actually thought this was his birthday party. Pathetic!" The crowd erupted into cruel, vicious chuckles. "The mother's clueless, and now the pup's delusional," another female wolf mocked. "They actually thought the alpha called them here to celebrate a runt." Ethan dropped his woven grass ball. It rolled into the dirt at the feet of the guards. The tears he had been fighting back all day finally spilled over. He realized, with the crushing, devastating clarity of a child whose heart has just been broken by his hero, that his father hadn't called him here out of love. He was summoned here to be a witness. Mia's blood turned to absolute, liquid fire. The sheer, unfathomable cruelty of it. Leo had used Ethan's birthday, his desperate, innocent wish for his father's love, as a trick to force Mia to attend this ceremony. Leo raised his hand, silencing the laughing crowd. He looked down at Mia, his eyes devoid of any guilt. "Mia," Leo announced, his voice booming with alpha authority. "I brought you here today to witness the future of this pack. The elders have spoken. For the stability of our borders and the prosperity of our bloodlines." Leo reached out and took Molly's hand, raising it high into the air for the entire pack to see. "I am officially declaring Molly Belrose as my Luna," Leo declared. "Under the light of the moon goddess, our packs shall unite." The grove erupted into deafening cheers and howls of approval. Mia stood in the dirt, her son crying against her leg, watching the man she had sacrificed her entire life for publicly replace her. The vow he had made, "If I ever betray you, may my bloodline wither and I die," echoed in her mind like a curse. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. Mia slowly reached down, picking up Ethan's discarded grass ball. She held her weeping son tight against her side. As the pack cheered for their new Luna, Mia looked up at Leo. The sorrow in her eyes was completely gone, replaced by the terrifying, dormant gaze of a royal alpha who had finally been awakened. "You want a Luna, Leo?" Mia whispered to the wind, her voice a deadly promise that carried the weight of an impending apocalypse. "Enjoy her while she lasts, because in today's, I am going to burn your entire world to ashes." The cheers for the new Luna echoed through Moonlight Grove, a deafening roar that celebrated the absolute betrayal of a mate and a son. Standing in the dirt, Mia didn't lower her head. She didn't let a single tear fall. She picked up Ethan, who was burying his face in her neck, his small body trembling with silent, agonizing sobs. She held him tight, wrapping her cloak around him to shield him from the cold wind and the crueler eyes of the pack. "Let's go home, my little wolf," Mia whispered into his ear. "Your real home." Mia turned her back on the glowing crystal altar. She began to walk back through the parted crowd of sneering wolves. "Mia, halt!" Leo's authoritative voice cracked like a whip across the clearing. The cheering died down instantly. Leo stood on the edge of the altar, looking down at her with a mixture of arrogant entitlement and faint irritation. He had expected her to weep. He had expected her to drop to her knees and beg him not to do this, to throw a hysterical fit that would only justify his decision to replace her. Her cold, unshakable silence unnerved him. "I did not dismiss you," Leo commanded, his alpha aura flaring, attempting to press her into submission. "As a member of this pack, you will stay and offer your blessing to the new Luna. It is tradition." Molly leaned against Leo's shoulder, wearing a sickly sweet, victorious smile. "Yes, Mia, We are practically family now. It would mean so much to us if you and little Ethan gave us your blessing. It's for the good of the pack." Mia stopped. She didn't turn around immediately. She let the silence stretch, heavy and suffocating, until the bravado in Leo's chest began to curdle into a strange, unexplainable dread. Slowly, Mia turned her head. Her eyes, once soft and filled with desperate love, were now hollow voids of absolute, freezing indifference. "My blessing?" Mia asked, her voice echoing perfectly in the dead silent grove. It didn't tremble. It carried a regal, terrifying resonance. "You want the blessing of the Omega you cast aside?" She looked at Leo, and then at Molly. "I bless you both," Mia said, her lips curving into a smile that promised absolute ruin. "I bless you with exactly the future you deserve. May your reign be as long as your loyalty, Leo, and may your Luna bring you everything you bargained for." Without another word, Mia turned back around and walked into the dark tree line, her stride unbroken, carrying her son away from the ashes of her past. Leo stood on the altar, a cold shiver running down his spine. For the first time in 7 years, he felt a sudden, inexplicable emptiness in his chest, hollow space where the absolute devotion of his mate used to be. The next 48 hours were a masterclass in silent preparation. The ancestral home was consumed by the chaotic preparations for the official Luna marking ceremony, a grand banquet meant to solidify Molly's position. The halls were draped in Twilight Clan colors. The kitchens roared with activity. In the darkest, coldest corner of the manor, Mia calmly packed a single, worn leather satchel. She took nothing that belonged to Leo. No dresses, no jewels he had bought her to appease his guilt, no pack insignia. She packed only Ethan's meager belongings, the rare herbs she had gathered, and the small wooden wolf pendant hanging around her son's neck. Ethan sat quietly on his bed, watching his mother. The bone fever had completely subsided, but the boy had changed. The desperate, anxious need to please his father had been burned away by the humiliation at Moonlight Grove. In its place was a quiet, solemn maturity. "Mom," Ethan said softly. Mia paused, looking at her son. "Yes, baby? We're really never coming back here, right?" Ethan asked, his large eyes searching hers. "I'm never going to see him again?" Mia walked over and knelt in front of him. "If that is what you want, Ethan, I will make sure he never looks at you again." Ethan reached up and touched the wooden wolf pendant. "I don't want to be an alpha's son anymore. I just want to be your son. I don't need him." Mia's heart swelled with a fierce, blinding pride. Her son was stronger than the entire pack combined. She pulled him into a tight embrace. "You are my son," Mia promised fiercely. "And you have blood in your veins that is older and stronger than anyone in this wretched territory. Tonight, you are going to meet your real family." Outside the window, the sun began to set, casting long, bloody shadows across the pine forest. The 48 hours were up. The king was coming. The grand banquet hall of the ancestral home was a scene of raucous, drunken celebration. Long wooden tables groaned under the weight of roasted meats and barrels of dark ale. The elders of the Twilight clan sat at the high table, laughing and toasting to their newfound control over Leo's territory. Leo sat at the center of the high table, a heavy golden chalice in his hand. Molly sat to his right, wearing a crown of woven silver branches, practically glowing with smug satisfaction. "To the new Luna," a Twilight elder roared, raising his cup. "And to the Alpha who finally had the sense to cast off the dead weight." The hall erupted in laughter and cheers. Leo forced a smile, raising his chalice, but the ale tasted like ash in his mouth. He kept glancing toward the heavy oak doors at the back of the hall. He hadn't seen Mia or Ethan in days. A strange, gnawing anxiety clawed at the back of his mind. "She's just throwing a tantrum," Leo told himself, taking a deep drink. "She has nowhere to go. She's an Omega with a sick pup. She'll come crawling back by morning." Suddenly, the heavy ale in Leo's chalice began to ripple. Thump! The floorboards beneath the heavy wooden tables vibrated. Thump! Thump! The laughter in the hall slowly died down as the vibrations grew stronger. Dust fell from the stone rafters above. The hanging iron chandeliers began to swing wildly, casting erratic, dancing shadows across the walls. "What is that?" Molly asked, her smug smile faltering as she gripped Leo's arm. "Is it an earthquake?" Leo stood up, his alpha instinct screaming that something was catastrophically wrong. The vibrations weren't random. They were rhythmic, heavy, synchronized. It was the sound of marching. "Guards," Leo barked, drawing his ceremonial sword. "Secure the perimeter." But before the pack guards could even reach the exits, a terrifying, deafening horn blast shattered the night air, echoing with such raw primal power that several younger wolves in the hall fell to their knees, clutching their ears. Crash! The massive, reinforced oak doors of the banquet hall were violently blown off their iron hinges. The heavy wood splintered into 1,000 pieces, flying across the room and smashing into the banquet tables. Screams of sheer terror erupted as the dust cleared. Standing in the shattered doorway was an army. They were not ordinary wolves. They were towering, massive lichen warriors clad in interlocking silver armor, their eyes glowing with a terrifying, unnatural golden light. They moved with absolute, lethal precision, fanning out and immediately surrounding the entire banquet hall in a matter of seconds. The Twilight Clan warriors tried to draw their weapons, but the lichens moved faster, disarming them with brutal, bone-crushing efficiency. "Stand down!" Leo roared, his voice cracking slightly in the face of the overwhelming force. He stepped down from the high table, trying to project his alpha aura. "This is my territory. Identify yourselves." The ranks of the silver-armored lichens parted perfectly down the center. Walking through the corridor of towering warriors was a man who radiated an aura so oppressive, so fundamentally dominant, that the air in the room felt physically heavy. He wore a long, sweeping black coat adorned with silver wolf pelts. His aristocratic face was sharp and unyielding, his golden eyes burning like twin suns. It was Alpha Arthur of the Silver Moon Clan, the vanguard of the Royal Knights Pack. Arthur walked slowly toward the high table, not even bothering to draw his massive broadsword. He looked at the trembling Twilight Clan elders, and then his gaze locked onto Leo. "Your territory?" Arthur asked. His voice wasn't a roar. It was a low, seismic rumble that demanded absolute submission. "You stand in a shack built of mud, boy, and call it a kingdom." Leo's heart hammered against his ribs. He recognized the insignias on the silver armor. The Silver Moon Clan, the most ruthless, powerful, and ancient royal bloodline on the continent. Why were they here? "Alpha Arthur," Leo said, forcing himself not to bow, though his knees trembled. "We have no quarrel with the royal packs. Why have you breached my borders?" Arthur stopped 10 feet from Leo. He looked at Molly, cowering behind Leo's shoulder, and let out a scoff of utter disgust. "I have not come for a quarrel," Arthur stated coldly, his golden eyes piercing Leo's soul. "I have come to collect what you stole. I have come for my queen." "Your queen?" Leo asked, utter confusion masking his fear. "There is no royal blood in this pack." "You are mistaken." Arthur didn't answer. He turned his gaze toward the dark staircase at the far end of the banquet hall. The entire room fell dead silent. Every eye followed Arthur's gaze. Slowly, descending the wooden stairs, was Mia. She wore a simple, dark traveling cloak, holding her worn leather satchel in one hand, and holding Ethan's small hand in the other. "Mia," Leo gasped, his mind struggling to process the scene. "What are you doing? Get back upstairs. You are embarrassing the pack in front of the royals." Mia didn't look at Leo. She walked straight past the trembling Twilight elders, straight past the shattered banquet tables. As Mia walked through the hall, the towering, terrifying lichen warriors, the deadliest killers on the continent, did the unthinkable. In perfect, synchronized unison, they dropped to one knee, bowing their heads in absolute reverence as she passed. Clank, clank, clank. The sound of armored knees hitting the stone floor echoed like a death knell in Leo's ears. Mia stopped in front of Arthur. Arthur, the unyielding alpha who had just insulted Leo's entire existence, immediately dropped to one knee. He placed his right fist over his heart, bowing his head deeply. "Princess Mia of the Royal Knights bloodline," Arthur announced, his voice vibrating with absolute, unquestionable devotion. "Your father, the king, awaits your return. Your army stands ready at your command." The banquet hall stopped breathing. Molly's jaw dropped so far it practically unhinged. The wine glass in her hand slipped from her fingers, shattering against the floor. "Princess," Leo whispered, his face draining of all color, turning a sickening, ghostly white. He stared at Mia, the woman he had called a weak omega, the woman he had slapped, the woman he had replaced. "Mia, what is this? What is he talking about?" Mia slowly turned to look at Leo. "You always wondered why your border was so stable, Leo," Mia said, her voice dripping with lethal, icy calm. "You thought it was Molly's political maneuvering. You thought you were a great alpha." She took a step toward him. The royal aura she had suppressed for 7 years finally erupted. It was blinding, suffocating, and terrifyingly pure. Leo fell to his knees, physically forced down by the sheer, crushing pressure of her true bloodline. The Twilight Elders behind him collapsed to the floor, gasping for air. The border was stable, Mia whispered, looking down at the pathetic man kneeling before her, because the rogue packs could smell the scent of a royal alpha in your home. They didn't fear you, Leo. They feared me. No, it's impossible. Leo wept, his arrogance completely, irreversibly shattered. You're my mate. You're an Omega. You took my mark. I took your mark to repay a debt of 3 silver arrows, Mia stated coldly. A debt you have squandered. A debt you shattered when you put the cheap crown on her head. Mia raised her right hand. She pressed her fingers violently against her own collarbone, right over the fading scar of Leo's mating mark. In the werewolf world, only a royal alpha possessed the sheer, terrifying spiritual power to forcefully break a blood bond without dying. Mia's eyes flashed a brilliant, blinding gold. She ripped her hand away from her chest. A sound like shattering glass echoed through the spiritual plane of the room. Leo let out a blood-curdling, agonizing scream. He clutched his chest, collapsing onto the stone floor, writhing in pure agony as the mate bond was violently, permanently severed. The power he had subconsciously leached from her bloodline for 7 years was instantly ripped away. He felt weak, hollow, and entirely powerless. Mia looked down at the man whimpering in the dirt. The debt is paid, Mia declared, her voice devoid of any mercy. You are nothing to me, Leo. You are nothing to my son. She turned back to Arthur, who stood up, offering his arm to her with absolute respect. Arthur, Mia said calmly, burn the altar at Moonlight Grove. Leave not a single stone standing. With pleasure, my queen. Arthur smiled, a dark predatory gleam in his golden eyes. Mia took Arthur's arm. She looked down at Ethan, who was staring up at the giant silver-armored warriors with wide, awestruck eyes. Come, Ethan, Mia smiled warmly, the ice in her eyes melting only for her son. Let's go home. As the royal vanguard escorted the true queen and the royal pup out of the shattered hall, the screams of the Twilight clan echoed into the night as the Lycans moved in to dismantle the pathetic empire Leo had built on lies. The Alpha had made his choice, and now he would rot in the ashes of it. The morning sun did not bring warmth to Leo's territory. It only illuminated the absolute devastation. Leo awoke on the cold, hard stone floor of the ruined banquet hall. His head throbbed with a sickening, hollow agony. He reached a trembling hand to his chest. The space where his mate bond had once resided was a jagged, empty void. He felt physically weaker, as if the marrow had been sucked from his bones. He staggered to his feet, coughing as the dust of the shattered oak doors filled his lungs. Leo, Molly ran into the hall, her white ceremonial gown torn and covered in soot. Her crown of silver branches was bent and broken. The smug, victorious Luna from the night before was completely gone, replaced by a frantic, terrified woman. Leo, you have to do something, Molly shrieked, grabbing his arm. Her fingernails dug into his skin, but there was no comfort in her touch. The altar at Moonlight Grove. It's gone. The lichens burned the ancient trees to ash and shattered the crystal. The elders are demanding answers. Before Leo could even process the destruction of his pack's most sacred site, a bloodied border scout sprinted into the hall, collapsing to his knees. "Alpha," the scout gasped, spitting blood onto the stone floor. "The northern border has fallen. The rogue packs. They breached the perimeter at dawn." "What?" Leo roared, his eyes wide with panic. "How did they break the line so fast?" "They aren't afraid anymore." The scout wept, looking up at Leo with a mixture of terror and accusation. "They said the scent of the royal blood has vanished from our lands. Without her pheromones, they know we are weak. The Twilight Clan warriors are abandoning their posts. They're fleeing." Leo stumbled backward, hitting the edge of a shattered table. The realization crashed over him like a suffocating avalanche. Everything Mia had said was true. He hadn't built an empire. He had simply been living under the invisible, protective umbrella of a queen who had willingly hidden her crown for him. Molly backed away from him, her eyes darting toward the exit. The woman who claimed she knew how to think big picture was already calculating her escape. "Molly," Leo reached out, desperate for the mate he had sacrificed everything for. "Don't touch me," Molly snapped, swatting his hand away, her true colors finally showing in the face of ruin. "You told me you were powerful. You told me you were a real alpha. You're nothing but a fool who threw away a royal." She turned and ran, leaving Leo alone in the ruins of his own arrogance. He fell to his knees in the dust, the agonizing screams of his pack echoing in the distance as the rogues descended. He was the Alpha of Ashes, and it was entirely his own fault. Hundreds of miles away, the landscape shifted from dying pine forests to majestic, snow-capped mountains. Mia rode in the center of the royal vanguard, seated in an opulent, fur-lined carriage drawn by massive dire wolves. Ethan sat beside her, his face pressed against the glass window, his eyes wide with absolute wonder. "Mom, look!" Ethan gasped, his breath fogging the glass. Rising from the peak of the highest mountain, piercing the clouds themselves, was the Silver Citadel. It was a masterpiece of ancient lichen architecture, massive towers of white stone and gleaming silver that reflected the sunlight like a beacon. Waterfalls cascaded from the cliffs, and thousands of armored warriors patrolled the massive obsidian walls. This was not a pack house. This was a kingdom. As the carriage crossed the massive drawbridge, the heavy iron gate swung open. The sound of 10,000 wolves howling in unison shook the very foundations of the earth, a terrifying, beautiful chorus welcoming their lost princess home. The carriage came to a halt in the grand courtyard. Alpha Arthur opened the door, offering his hand to Mia. As she stepped out, an older man wearing a heavy cloak of white dire wolf fur rushed down the palace steps. The scars on his face spoke of 100 wars, but his eyes were filled with the tender, desperate tears of a father. "Mia," the king choked out, completely abandoning his royal decorum. He threw his arms around her, holding his daughter for the first time in 7 years. "My beautiful girl, you're finally home." "I'm sorry, father." Mia wept into his chest, the final remnants of her pain washing away in his embrace. "I'm so sorry." The king pulled back, wiping her tears with his rough thumbs. "No more apologies. You are safe now." He looked down. Hiding shyly behind Mia's legs was Ethan, clutching his mother's cloak. The boy looked up at the giant, scarred king, intimidated by the sheer power radiating from the man. The king didn't stand tall. He immediately dropped to one knee, ignoring the dirt on the courtyard stones until he was eye level with the small boy. "And who is this mighty warrior?" the king asked, his voice softening into a gentle, warm rumble. "I'm Ethan," the boy whispered nervously. The king smiled, reaching out to gently touch the wooden wolf pendant around Ethan's neck. "Ethan, you have the eyes of a king. Welcome to your true home, my grandson." Later that evening, in the grand medical wing of the Citadel, the royal healers examined Ethan. For years, Leo's pack doctors had claimed Ethan was a defective runt plagued by a bone fever that made him useless. But the chief royal healer, an ancient and wise lichen, simply laughed when he examined the boy. "Bone fever?" the healer scoffed, shaking his head. "Absolute nonsense. My princess, this boy is not sick. He is bursting with power." Mia stood by the bed, Arthur standing protectively behind her. "What do you mean?" "The bloodline of the royal Nikes and the silver moon is the most dominant in the world," the healer explained, his eyes gleaming with awe. "Ethan's inner wolf is a royal. It is massive. It is ancient. The environment in that pathetic mud pack was too spiritually weak to support his transformation. His inner wolf was literally burning him from the inside out, trying to break free from the suppression of that false alpha." Arthur stepped forward, looking down at Ethan. "He just needs the right moonlight and the right pack." That midnight, under the full, brilliant glow of the silver moon, Mia and Arthur led Ethan to the highest balcony of the Citadel. The air was crisp and pure, completely untainted by the toxic lies of his past. "Don't be afraid, Ethan," Arthur said gently, kneeling beside him. "Let it out. You are not a runt. You are a prince." Ethan closed his eyes. He took a deep breath of the mountain air. For the first time in his life, he didn't feel the suffocating pressure of his father's disappointment. He felt love. He felt absolute, unconditional acceptance from his mother, his grandfather, and Arthur. A brilliant, blinding white light erupted from the small boy's chest. The sound of cracking bones was not painful. It was a symphony of release. Ethan threw his head back and let out a howl that echoed across the entire mountain range. When the light faded, standing on the balcony was not a small, weak boy. It was a magnificent, massive wolf pup with fur as pure as freshly fallen snow, and eyes that glowed with a piercing, royal gold. He was a white lichen, the rarest and most powerful manifestation of their bloodline. Mia covered her mouth, tears of absolute joy streaming down her face. The white pup bounded over to her, nuzzling his massive head against her legs, his tail wagging furiously. He wasn't broken. He was perfect. 1 year later, the throne room of the Silver Citadel was a masterpiece of light and shadow. Mia stood before the massive stained glass window, looking out over the sprawling, prosperous territory of her family. She wore a gown of deep royal blue, a silver crown resting flawlessly upon her dark hair. She was no longer an Omega. She was the reigning sovereign, having taken over the daily governance from her retiring father. Through the grand arches of the courtyard below, she could see a massive white wolf Ethan, now twice the size of a normal wolf, his age wrestling playfully with the elite Lycan guards, his joyful barks echoing off the stone walls. "He's going to be a giant," a deep, warm voice murmured from behind her. Arthur stepped up to her side, wrapping a strong, protective arm around her waist. He wore the armor of the Vanguard commander, but his eyes held only absolute, unyielding devotion for the woman beside him. "He has the best teachers," Mia smiled, leaning her head against Arthur's shoulder. "We received a scout report from the southern borders today," Arthur noted casually, kissing the top of her head. "The Twilight Clan has completely dissolved. The territory is overrun. Leo is missing, presumed dead in the Rogue Wars." Mia didn't flinch. She felt absolutely nothing at the mention of his name. The ghost of her past had finally been laid to rest in the ashes he created. "Let the forest reclaim what is left of them," Mia said, her voice serene and unshakable. She turned away from the window, looking up into Arthur's golden eyes. The man who had waited 7 years. The man who had crossed a continent to bring her home. "Our future is here," the Queen whispered, pulling him into a kiss beneath the light of the silver moon. And in the citadel of the true royals, the reign of the silver moon had only just begun.